We do have someone scheduled.
That's what I have down, that it's going to be me, Patty.
I thought it was.
And the topic is CDC, duck's butts.
Yes.
But
So anyway, that ought to be a really good program coming in on December 1st. But next week, there's no meeting. And as we talked about just a few minutes ago, and several of you have already heard this, but for those of you that haven't, and if you haven't donated, we'd love for you to donate to our Women Connect fundraiser. We are trying to raise money for our booth whenever we are, when we can go back on the road. We want to be able to have a really nice booth with banners and tablecloths and all the kinds of things you need to present yourself very well as far as Women Connect goes. And we want to, because we'll be doing that at a number of different shows. So we're trying to raise the money so that we can have the items for that. If you want to donate, please, you can go to FFI and there is a Women Connect button to donate to. And we would love to have your donation. We've gotten anything from $5 to $200. So we'd love to have you to donate. Thank you.
Thanks, Patty.
Yeah.
We said we started with our flags, toilet paper with Sharpies, Women Connect, and we're up to glitter. So thank you, everybody who's donated. It's going to be good when we can get back live and attending the expos, and hopefully we will be in all of your areas. All right, Al, I am going to spotlight you. There you go.
Oh, good. Well, welcome to the last in the series of 6, which are combination Zoom and fly tying. And before we get into the fly tying, let's do a little review of our journey to this point. Maybe remind you of a few things. Anyway, it was BT's on the Fly and a Women's Connect program. How we started, if you'll remember way back when, we started with a focusing rail, a whole bunch of swing arm lamps, and a whole lot of extension cords. And you'll notice in the upper right picture where you can see some swing arm lamps, the camera is mounted on a piece of 1x4. We were really in the Cadillac style there. Okay, we started out trying to capture things with our cables that we normally download pictures from our cameras. And that sort of worked, but it was pretty herky-jerky. And in time, we learned about capture cards. I also learned that there's a difference in price. These are the prices that you see here as of today, $120 versus $15. And the one on the left is called a Cam Link. It's by Elgato, and the current price is $120. However, when we started our journey together, it was to $300 because of the supply and demand situation with the close down of COVID and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, the thing about the Cam Link that makes it so expensive is that it can run 4K video out. And 4K, as you know, if you have a television that's on 4K, it's pretty bright, looks pretty nice. On the other hand, the one on the right-hand side is just called an HDMI video capture card, and it will capture 1080 or 720. Well, we've discussed this in the past, but I'll remind you anyway. If you decide to buy the expensive link, you probably are going to have a few problems with it because you're trying to shove an awful large amount of information into a really small pipe. The Zoom program will only accept 720p. Now, there's a whole lot of difference between 720p and 4000. So you can see that there is a bit of a difference. It's kind of like looking at a 50-gallon drum of water with a 1/4-inch hose letting water out of it. The 1/4 inch will only allow the 50 gallons to drain at a certain speed, period. No matter how much you try, if you put 100 gallons behind it, it won't go any faster. That's all the 1/4 inch can handle. And that's what Zoom is right now. I have no doubt though, as the next year unfolds, we'll be a year from now zooming at much higher speeds than we are today.
Zooming.
Oh, yeah, yeah, we will zooming. Well, anyway, these are the connections. And basically you can see on the left, we have a camera on a tripod. There's an HDMI cable coming out of the camera to the HDMI video capture card. On the other side of that card, there's a USB connection going to the laptop into the USB plug-in on the side of the laptop. There are other things you can use that capture card for, like PlayStations, TV boxes, video cameras, projectors, and so forth. And you can run them into laptops, a Mac computer, or just a standard PC computer. Let's talk about connections. Let's think back for a second. I mentioned the 50-gallon drum and the 1/4 inch hose. What do you think happens with when you bend that hose in half and the flow really slows down? Is there anything you can do? That's a bottleneck when you put a pinch in that hose and it cannot drain any faster than the pinch will allow. The bottleneck is caused in our system from USB cables. There's a number of different kinds of USB cable. Most of us have computers today with a USB 3.0 connection. A lot of them, if you have an older computer, it has a USB 2.0 connection. Well, a 2.0 connection can handle about 500,000 bits of information per second, while a USB 3 can handle about 5 million. A lot of difference between 500,000 and 5 million. So you can see if you're going to purchase cords and you're going to need them to connect everything, get the highest speed ones that you can get, which is 3.0, and they're only a couple of dollars difference. And you won't be putting a bottleneck into your system. Okay, the first thing you're going to find when you start hooking multiple cameras up to your computer is you're going to run out of USB ports. Oh dear, well, I got this grand plan. On the left, for less than $10, I could get this one, I could plug 7 things into it. Oh boy, was I in hog heaven. And I ordered not one. I said, Jesus, if I can get 7 out of 1, I can get 14 out of 2. So I ordered 2 of them for less than $10 a piece. I got 2 of them here. I'll give to anybody that wants them if they want to pay the shipping, because that's just about what they're worth. On the right-hand side, though, is the one I'm using right now. It's a $40 unit. It's got its own power supply and is used to run everything here except cameras. And we'll talk about the cameras here in just a moment. Webcams. If you recall, I think it was the second lesson that we did, or the third. Anyway, one of the first ones was using webcams to do a fly tying class. On the left is a manual focus. They run about $30. They do a good job as long as you put them in a stationary position, focus on the fly, and use it strictly for tying. If you're going to do other things, you'll need to have some autofocus and a little bit better quality camera. And you can see there's a difference in price. The one on the right cost $120, today's prices, and the one on the left is somewhere between 15 and 30, depending on which website you look at. Anyway, those are all plugged in using a USB cable. Before we go any further, let me go back to that. Using the USB cable. Now, to plug one of those in, you really need to plug it into a port, not a hub like I showed you there, but you need to plug it into an actual port on your laptop. So if you're going to run 2 cameras plus the camera inside the laptop, you're going to be using up 2 USB ports, external, importing information from the outside cameras, and then the one camera inside. And so that means you're going to need to have a laptop with at least 3 USB ports so you can plug that hub in to run all the other stuff. Because one of the things that I learned, and this was a month-long process of beating my head against the wall, and it was only in the last couple of weeks I figured it out. You cannot plug a camera into a port expander like that guy on the right. It does everything really, really well, except it doesn't handle the flow from a camera. What happens? Well, it seems to work at first. Then all of a sudden the camera will freeze up. It'll all of a sudden quit working, and then it'll catch back up. Weird stuff. But anyway, you need to plug the camera straight into the computer and not through a hub. Anyway, if you recall in the first picture, we were looking at swing arm lamps and all the stuff that we were using to do our presentation. Well, we've gone to all LED stuff. This is a little flex arm thing that I got off of eBay. You can see that it's 15 inches tall. The actual head is 7.8, it's almost 8 inches, and it has an adjustable brightness and color adjustment. Oh, and by the way, down at the bottom, that little 2.75 means it can fit onto a table that's at 2 3/4 inches across or deep. That's how big the clamp is. Anyway, they run 15 bucks a piece. I've got 4 of them now. I got rid of like 10 swing arm lamps. They were all over the place. They were like monsters ready to eat me up. Just terrible. But anyway, setting all that aside, it's time to tie flies.
And I still let him have his PayPal account.
Yeah, she even upgraded it for me.
I do
What
have
a
a
wonderful.
quick question regarding your camera that you showed. You showed that Logitech autofocus
Yes,
camera,
yes.
that one. So do you use that currently when you're, how do you use that currently?
I'm currently using it. When we get to the, I'm going to go through the cameras real quick once we get out of the PowerPoint presentation. And when we get to the materials,
Uh-huh.
the Logitech is the one doing the materials.
Okay,
One of the things, okay, the Nikon that I'm using is a 24 megapixel Nikon digital SLR, one of the newer ones. And not the highest megapixel count, but still pretty high. The Logitech is one of the highest webcam options. It's got 2. The manual focus one next to it is 1.2.
yeah,
So you remember back in the days when our digital cameras had 1 megapixel and we thought it was incredible? Well,
yeah,
it's not so incredible anymore.
yeah.
And the detail that you get out of that is much less than you will out of some of the others. Did
I
that-
asked because that Logitech is actually what's currently on my computer. It's what my face is coming in on. And I had tried it for my Vice and we couldn't get it to stay focused on the fly. So you're not surprised at that then, right?
I don't tie with it. What it does is it stays in front of the materials. And if I pick up a material and kind of point at something, and you'll see that here in a minute, it will refocus on that. So that's really handy. On the other hand, when you are doing stuff at a vise and you want it to stay on the fly, if you move through the frame with your hands, it's going to refocus on your hands. And it just drives you crazy, doesn't it?
Yeah. So that's the trouble I was having. I was surprised. Okay, gotcha.
Okay, I have read online with the Logitech that you can go into a program on the Logitech website and do something about making it manual focus. I haven't worried about it because I've got a manual focus camera that, quite frankly, I'm not that impressed. You do so much better with doing a presentation with a cell phone than you do with a webcam, I think.
Yeah, and that's what I ended up doing on your
Yeah.
advice. So, okay.
Yeah, this is Susan, isn't it?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Good. Well, that's yeah. You do a really nice job with the cell phone the way you've got it set up.
Okay. Well, I'll stick with that then. Thank you.
Okay. Good. You bet. Okay. Well, that's the lighting, and now we're moving to tying the easy muddler.
Al, I had a question. This is John Kreft.
Yes, John. Let me.
So what I just heard you say was that you're really not using that connection box anymore. You're plugging all the cameras directly into the computers. So that's a change from a week or 2 ago.
That's correct, because it's one of those learning things that
Okay.
4 weeks ago I was using it and beating my head against the wall because I was getting poor results. And I finally figured out what the result problem or what the problem was. What I'm doing now is that I'm running all my lights. I've got a mouse. I've got a couple of other items. I don't even remember what they are, but they're, oh yeah, microphone. All that stuff is plugged in there, but the bandwidth required for a camera, you really, You really don't want to have any kind of interruption to the flow, if you will, from the camera straight into the computer.
Got it. That's the biggest aha for me tonight. Thank you.
Okay, good. All right. And before I go into the fly itself, is there any other questions as far as Zoom meetings and so forth? Okay, good. Well, we're looking at the Easy Muddler presentation that we're going to do. It's the final one in this series, and we're doing it for Women's Connect. The Easy Muddler. You know, several weeks ago, we talked about two streamers that we use for pounding the bank, and we told you they were our favorites. They are. Key words in that last sentence were pounding the bank. They have a lot of action in them, and they're really great when you are stripping fast. You know, pound it to the bank, give it a couple, 3 strips, drift a little further in your drift boat, recast, strip. Works really well for that. The Easy Muddler, though, is my absolute #1 favorite dry fly, wet fly, everything kind of fly there is, except for one, the Renegade. The Renegade is the first, the Easy Muddler is the second. In fact, one year, it was 1981, I decided to run an experiment. I was younger then, and I thought I still had lots of time, so I ran this experiment that I was going to fish with one fly pattern style for a year. And I did. It was a muddler, tied in size 2 to 22. And I fished it for everything and anything under the sun, sizes and everything. And learned a lot in fishing that muddler. And one of the things that I came up with was what we're going to share with you tonight. The original muddler had quill wings on them and all, and quill tails and a tinsel body and all that stuff. Well, this one you're going to see has got a marabou type stuff. It's called chickaboo, but marabou works just fine as well. And what we do is we often fish it as an on top in the film, under the film type of emerger sort of a thing. We put some of our fly float on the spun head and the collar, the deer hair collar, and then we put fly sink on the wing, the tail, and the body. And when it lands on the water, the one is above the surface, the other one is in the surface film. It's an incredible killer for an emerger type pattern, and especially when you get the sizes similar to what already is emerging on the water. Okay, we're going to be using a 3X long streamer hook, and we say number 2 to 12, but you already know that I've tied it down to 22, but most of the small ones that I carry in my fly box are 16s and 18s. I've gone down to the 20 and 22 just to prove to myself that I could do it. But the truth of the matter is, it slows me down quite a bit to try to tie that small of a muddler. The thread is red floss. That's for the body, by the way. The tail is going to be chickaboo or marabou, and you can pick whatever color you want. The body is red floss. The wing is chickaboo or marabou. Again, the color, whichever you want. The gills will be red floss. The thread is black, red, or whatever you want. And the head will be deer hair, and it'll be spun and trimmed. Now let's get out of here. Okay, and that brings us back. Let me turn this so you can see what's going on, Gretch. We have a question, I think, from somebody. What is chickaboo? Well, why don't you take me over to the materials camera, Gretch? Okay, good. Well, first off, before I get to the chickaboo, I want to set this aside and put it to good use. You all know what static guard is. We've talked about it a number of times, but in case this is your first time on the Zoom connection, this gets rid of static electricity. You'll find it in the laundry and detergent aisle in the supermarket. It's for taking static electricity out of women's clothes, but it also works incredibly well for animal hair. Now, you've all seen this before because we have used this kind of hair as we ventured up to this last day, but we're not going to use this. This is for wings and tails on dry flies, humpies, wolves, stimulators, all the kind of stuff you've seen before. Today, we're going to be focusing on this hair right here. And I'm going to start by spraying everything down so I can. Okay, good. That'll get the static electricity out of here. I'll get that dark hair out of here. We don't need that. And before I pick up the hair, let's talk about Chickaboo. Chickaboo is a product sold by Whiting Farms. And if you were to look at the bird, this area right here that I'm running my hands over is the breast feathers. This is the area that goes into the crotch of the bird. It's kind of a marabou type stuff, except it's very short. So this is up here in the breast area is really great soft tackle stuff. And this down here is really nice short marabou stuff. And you're going to see that we really need that short marabou stuff. Now, let me put that away. And by the way, Susan Parsons, I think you can see that as I move my hands up and down in the frame, the camera refocuses with me. And that's very helpful for some things. It sure isn't though when you're trying to use it to tie a fly.
Yeah, gotcha.
Okay, now I've got my two colors of floss. I'm just gonna take or one color of floss and one color of thread. I'll move them over to the tying bench. And we'll get to this. Now, as you'll recall, when we were selecting hair, that this hair up here was from along the backbone, the stuff that I'm holding in my left hand. And the other was from down along the rib. The stuff along the backbone doesn't flare very much. It's really good for the wings and tails. But this stuff along here, as it gets lighter and lighter and lighter down this way, it's really good for flaring. It's really good for spinning. And I did tease it a little bit last week, and that was that we're going to use the rotating function of the vise to apply hair. So let's just ease on over to the fly tying station here now.
Oops, I clicked the wrong thing.
There we go. There we got it. Okay, good. Well, in fact, what you're looking at right now is the direction we're going tonight. We're going towards the easy muddler. And we'll just set that aside for a minute. And I'll pick up a hook. It's a 3X long. I think this is, yes, size 8. And I'm going to start my floss. Now, over the weekend, we had a humpy tying clinic, and we used stuff called nylon stretch from the Danville Corporation. It's a really, I don't know, kind of multi-stranded type of stuff that lays really flat and smooth and never gets twists in it, at least that cause a problem with your body. If you use regular single strand floss, as you wrap your body, you get twists in it, and it can create a body that's not quite so smooth. But I want you to notice how smooth this goes on. By the way, it's on our website, or you can ask your local fly shop to stock it. It's something that once people catch on to it, it's some pretty incredible stuff. See how nice and smooth that body is? Now I want you to notice that I'm going to stop before I get all the way back to my starting point. Usually when I'm tying with hair, I stop 2 turns back. This time I only stopped 1 because the bulk of the material I'm going to use for the tail is much less than the bulk of hair. And this is a chickaboo feather. And you may notice that it's not looking quite as fuzzy as it was. That's because I licked it a little bit. Kind of, yeah, I know, Gretchen, you don't want to kiss me anymore. I know. Anyway, that's so I can kind of control it. Otherwise, it just kind of goes crazy while we're tying it here. And I'm just going to head bind that on. And as you can see, again, back to that floss. Doesn't that make a nice smooth looking body? And by this time, if you are using standard single strand floss, you would be having to give it a spin like that to untwist it. Well, the twists are still there, but because this particular strand does not really have a side to it, it's just a whole lot of multiple strands all held together. There we go. That doesn't happen. Let me trim that out.
Check the other side of your tail.
Oh yeah. Thank you, Gretchen. she can see stuff from the camera that I can't. And my tail was pushed over a little bit there. And I've got a camera that lands this right smack there. And so I'm guessing where the tail is. So thank you, dear. She's the eyes that I don't have at this point. Now here's another one that I've already slicked up a little bit that we're going to use for the wing. Whoops. I want that to be right about there. Excuse me. So I'm going to just set that in there, lash it into place. Everything straight on that, Gretchen? Good. Alrighty. Now we're forming the gills. And I'm going to stop right there and get my whip finish tool. This fly is going so fast that you're not going to believe it. We'll slow down a little bit when we get to spinning the hair and so forth. I kind of messed that up. I got to get that out of there and start that over. That's not working out. There we go. There we go. Now I'll trim that off. And at this point, I switch to my black tying thread to spin hair and all that type of stuff. But I'm going to set this fly aside for a moment. And we're going to talk about spinning hair on another hook, and then we'll come back and actually finish our fly here in a minute. Let me just put that in a hackle pliers so that I can easily pick it up. One of the things that I've learned is really is handy to be able to just reach down and grab that hackle pliers, because I don't know what it is about those darn hooks, but when you're tying on the internet live, it seems like it's real easy to just drop the darn things, or they're too flat on the surface of the table or whatever. All right, I'm just gonna put some thread on here. We'll call that good enough. Now I'm gonna reach.
That's your 6/0, right?
Yeah, it's a, I don't, no, this is 3/0. I usually use 6/0, but I couldn't find the black 6/0 this evening, so I just grabbed a 3/0, which is in the thing right next to it. Now I've gone over to the hair and just trim the piece off. You already can see all the junk in there. We got to get rid of that, and I'm not going to do it with the camera here, so I'm going to go out over the wastebasket and do that. You can just know that I'm off camera doing that. Then I'll show you kind of how I do it when I get back. Now, it's really important to get that underfur and stuff and short fibers out. And the way you do that is you rapidly move your fingers up and down like this. And what that does is we'll get that stuff out without building up additional static electricity. If you do it always in one direction only, or if you stroke it, you start building up static electricity, and pretty soon that spray that I gave it won't do it any good. All right, now I'm going to stack this because we're getting ready to do our collar. One of the things I do when I do a collar on a muddler, I never spin it. I always flare it in place, and then I spin all the other applications. And it's I can't tell you why, except that my muddlers seem to turn out better when I do that. So what I found is that I set the collar in place, and I kind of see how I'm pushing it down, so I'm breaking the bundle apart. Maybe I can turn it on its side here so you can better see. And I'm just kind of going down and dividing the bundle in half with the hook. Well, anyway, I'm just going to get that ready to go, set it in place, and then really cinch down into it. And now I'll just work my way through those flared ends. And you see that gives me a nice collar across the top of the fly, and I want the collar only across the top. If I end up with some on the bottom, I'll trim it off, because that's part of the attraction of this fly. It doesn't make any difference if you're fishing it wet, whether it's down there or not. But I'll tell you, when you're fishing it in the surface film as an emerger type of a presentation, you don't want that collar on the underside of the fly. It just doesn't seem to work as good for some reason. Anyway, now we're going to spin hair using the rotating feature of the vise. But first, we're going to talk about spinning as a process. You just reach over here and get another bundle of hair. And while I'm off camera, you already know what I'll be doing. I'm going to be knocking all the fur out. I'm sorry, what?
Are you sure you don't have single strand floss?
I'm pretty sure it's 3/0. Okay, now spinning hair, and where people get into trouble, spinning it by hand, and that's what I'm going to do this first time, is to spin it by hand, is that they get rid of all the excess. And the way you spin hair is, watch my right finger. You go around the hook, increasing pressure as you go around the hook and doing it evenly and consistently. And then that will evenly place the spun hair around the hook. Well, what happens to a lot of people is that as they do that, they're not the same over on this side as they are over on this side. And they end up with an unevenly spun bundle of hair. I've been doing this for a while, so I'm not having that problem, but many people do. But there's a way to cure the problem, if you will. Notice that I've got these hair packers. Well, a friend made those for me many, many years ago. His name was Chris Helm. But anyway, you can use just about anything, including your thumbnail, if you want. Now we're going to spin it using the rotating function of the vise. Before I do that, any questions up to this point? Okay, good. I'll get another bundle of hair and get all the trash out of it. All right. 3 turns is what you want. If you go 4, it's going to bind on itself. If you go 2, the bundle will start, half of it will fall off. So you want 3 snug but not tight turns holding it in place. Now you can't see this, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab my bobbin, and at the same time I'm grabbing the bobbin, I will be pinching the spool so it won't turn, because what I want to do is rotate the vise, and as the vise rotates, it gradually tightens, and as long as I keep that bobbin held consistently tight and the bobbin rotates, it will be increasingly getting shorter. The thread will increasingly be getting shorter and spinning the hair on the hook. So here we go. Let me lay down my scissors so I don't accidentally cut the thread while I'm doing it. Get the bobbin up there. I'm pinching the spool, and I just start rotating. You see that all of a sudden grab there and spin? It's evenly distributed all the way around the hook. We'll do that again just before we go back to our fly. All right, get another bundle of hair. But this time, to heck with it. I wonder if I can get by without even pulling all that fuzz and crap out. I'll bet you that it's still in there, but you know what? Let's see if we can make it spin without even having to mess around with that. 3 turns, snip, grab the bobbin, lay the scissors down so I don't cut the thread, pinch the spool, and start spinning. Well, I'll be darned, you can spin it with all that crud in there too. You see how that is evenly distributed all the way around the hook? That's because you applied a increasingly shorter thread as you went around the hook because you didn't move your hand, and that keeps from having uneven applications of pressure. Okay, now that's just a piece of throwaway junk. I'll just get rid of that for now. But you can see it's, in fact, let me just clip it real good just to, so you can see that it's, all right, let me put it back in the vise. Okay, now you can see that you've got a pretty even application of hair all the way around the hook.
That's
All right,
freaking
toss it.
amazing. Holy cow. That's like magic.
It is.
That's amazing.
All right, now we're back to putting the hook in the vise. I've already whipped it off, so I'm just going to add my thread right in front. Now you notice that little red area where the wing is tied on? That's called the gill area. I want you to notice that I am not going to be spinning hair over that. If you try to spin hair over that, you have a problem. And not only do you have that problem, but it's going to make the head too long. If I were to try to spin it over that, I would move all of this a little bit further forward. Otherwise, my head would get too big. But I'm going to go ahead now, and I'm still going to remove the crud because I'm going to stack the first part for the collar. So I'm over the waste bin right now, knocking all that trash out. Boy, I'm glad I sprayed that stuff down. This afternoon when I was trying a test fly, it was so much static electricity in here, I could just, everything was sticking to me. You can't tell that we're running a furnace and it's wintertime in Idaho. By the way, I want you to notice the colors in that chickaboo, though that modeling and that natural black and colors in there. When you see that thing in the water, it sure looks like a muddler. I just, when we got all this chickaboo from Tom Whiting, I purposely picked that stuff for the muddler stuff, and we still have quite a bit of it left, except for the muddler stuff. Boy, I've used up darn near all of it. I must have got 20 or 30 of those darn things when we got them from him. All right. Now I'm going to measure that. I'm going to want that set back there just about like that. And so I'm going to reach over in this hand and I'm going to cut all that off right about, let me see if you can see from right about there. Well, I'm going to do that over a waste bin, not all over the camera and the tying area. So now I've got that all trimmed off. And now we're going to do just like before. Remember, we kind of shoved it down around the hook, went around, and then really cinch it into place. Now, what I want to make sure is that I didn't get a whole bunch underneath, and I didn't. I'm going to have to trim a little bit out, but not very much. Now, I want you to notice that I kind of wiggle my thread through the spun hair like that, and then tighten up, and then wiggle through again and tighten up. Well, that just kind of binds it in place and keeps it from slipping around on you. You're just anchoring it a little bit more. Okay, set that aside. Okay. Two, three turns. Trim. Lay the scissors down. Grab the bobbin and the spool. Okay, there we go. That one's done. Work my way forward. Grab my hair packer. Well, there's not a lot of room left there, but I think I can get another one. Yeah, you can kind of see that we've got a little bit of space left there. I'm going to try to fill that up with another bundle of hair, but not quite so big this time. All right, got all the crud out, and I know I told you didn't really need to clean the crud out, and that's up to you. But I don't know. I can't do that. Just leaving the crud in there. It's just doesn't work for me. Now I'm going to anchor this in place with 3 turns. Trim. Grab the bobbin, pinch the spool, and there we go. Nicely placed application of spun hair. Now, all right, here we go. Now I'm going to use my handy dandy half hitch tool. This thing has been with me for 40 years. It's like an old buddy. It's made out of a knitting needle, homemade, and it's just like I said, it's a friend. I've got all kinds of them around here for sale, but this one's not. My wife and my dog are not for sale, and neither are a couple of my tools. Okay, we'll just finish tying that off. And now it comes time to trim our muddler head. But before I go any further, do we have any questions?
Was everybody that's tying caught up?
Not quite.
Okay.
Well, I can wait a sec. We can chat. What I'm going to do is I'm going to trim all the wild stuff off, so at least it's not quite as crazy as it was.
You already, yeah, you whip finished. Okay. Stuff's getting in the way.
One of the things that a lot of people have trouble with is they get a muddler, if they even get the hair on evenly, then they have to trim it. And getting it trimmed so that it is even, not only from the side, but when you look at it from the front, is not always easy. But I've got what I think is a fairly foolproof way to get the job done. Now, is everybody ready for me to go ahead and go forward?
George wants to see the top half of your vise to see the rotating function.
The top half of my vise to see the rotating function. I'm like this.
Go back further so he can see the top of the vise.
He wants me to.
He doesn't want to see the fly, he wants to see the vise.
Oh, that's going to be a problem. Let's see here. What do we do?
Well, why don't I get a different one and we'll put it under the material.
Oh, what a good idea. Yeah, okay. Gretchen's going to go grab her vise. We'll put it under the material camera and show you, and then we'll be able to better illustrate that, I guess you could say. Thank you, sweetheart. Okay, if you want to get me on the materials camera, yeah. And for you, Susan, we're going back to the Logitech.
Okay.
Okay, and I think I'll get the materials out of my way so that you can see. You should be able to see that pretty good. That's the vise right there. So when we're rotating, we're actually, I got Gretchen's vise and she likes it a little tighter than I like mine. Okay, there we go. You're rotating it just like that. And this may look like I'm rotating it backwards, but I'm actually rotating it in the direction that I have to go to apply the thread in a clockwise direction from this direction here. I have to rotate from here in the opposite direction. We'll show you that in just a little bit. I'll give this back to Gretchen. Did that answer your question? Was it George?
Yeah, he said thank you.
Okay, good. Oh, good idea on that camera, Gretch. I'll flip over to the Weiss. Okay, here's the foolproof way of getting an evenly trimmed muddler head. Don't try to trim it so that it's cylindrical or anything. Trim it as a square, a cube rather, as a cube. Trim it first flat across the bottom.
Yep, so that's the top.
Okay, well, the bottom's kind of flattened off. Let me flatten it off just a little bit better. That's not quite real good yet. There you can see that's pretty well flattened off. Let me get all the hair out of here. Now let's just go around to the top. Well, I have to get down low to see this one now. We'll cut that one flat as well. No going around or nothing, just flat. I think you can kind of see that most of that's flat. I got a little bit sticking out here and there. We're going to take care of that in a minute. Now, so you can see the bottom and you can see the top is flattened off. So let's go to the sides. Let's cut them square as well. So now we have a foundation head that is about the same dimension back from front to back as it is from side to side. It's not all going to be all different. So the first thing we're going to do now is take and trim these wild guys off the front. Now, the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take the square edges off. You see, we got one here, here, and then I'll turn it here and here. So there's 4 square edges that need to be knocked off. Let's just go clip, clip, clip. We'll go to the next one. And we'll go to the next one. And now we're just going to kind of lay the scissors in at an angle, and I'm going to start trimming at an angle across the front, just as I rotate the vise. A little bit at a time and trim. Now that makes a pretty decent looking trim on that guy. Now we got all this stuff back here. Well, let me trim it out best I can. Now, what we don't want to do is to cut the hair from the head and cut our hackle off at the same time. So how do you do that? You take your scissors like this, lay it flat, and bring it in. And now I'll make my cut. Protect the hackle, cut the head. Okay, and over here, right in here, I got a couple of really small ones. I'm gonna just have to get right down in there. I don't know if you can see what I'm doing. Let me turn it a little bit more, maybe you can see better. I got one right there that's, so I push back, come forward. There we go, I got him.
Still a little bit more towards the back. There you go.
Okay, now we're gonna do some of the last trims here on the far side.
Wow.
And there's our muddler, complete. I could probably do a little bit better job, but I'll have to pull it out here and not have a camera between me and you. But that's how you trim a muddler and get it to be evenly shaped from the front as well as the side. Any questions? Well, good. George asked about that rotating of the vise, and I wanted to show you something about just applying thread with the rotating feature. You can see right there that I am just wrapping in a clockwise direction if I were to step around and look at the eye of the hook from this direction. I come around the hook just like that. That's the clockwise direction. For me to continue to do that, I have to rotate the vise back here the opposite direction. And now it's continuing in the same direction that I was going before. I can pick up the pace there, or I can just rotate the vise. And you can see that it's applying the thread. I don't know if that answers any questions or not, but anyway, that's how the rotation works. But when I first started trying to tie rotary, I said, Jesus, this is backwards. It shouldn't be that way. And of course, I was unwinding everything, but there we are. I'll cut that off, put that down, and put the focus fly back up so I'm ready to go tomorrow night when I have to do this all over again. I just can't seem to get it right. I keep having to do it over. Anyway, I guess
So I have a couple questions. When I spun with the rotary, it seemed like all of a sudden it grabbed. That's what it's supposed to do, right?
it's what it's supposed. It kind of slips around and does something. And all of a sudden, it grabs a hold and spins.
Yeah.
And when it does that grab a hold at the last bit is what it actually is doing the even distribution around the hook.
Okay. And then the other thing is, what's the difference between stacked and spun
right.
hair?
Just a minute. I'm sorry. What between what kind of hair?
What's the difference between stacked hair and spun hair, or are they really the same?
Well, stacked hair is when you even the tips up, and I've got stacked hair on the collar of the muddler. It's where all the tips are evened up. Spun hair is when you actually position it around the hook.
The hook, okay.
We did have some people tying along.
Well, then they must have all turned out perfect flies. I can tell from here.
No, I'm still trimming.
I saw David smiling a lot, and I don't know if he was laughing at his efforts or.
It might take you.
My fly has a hole in his head.
Oh,
Mine's head is too big, I think.
well, that the proportions things are all of what you're going to have to learn to work out, but the positioning of the hair will get a lot easier. I'll guarantee you, do 6 of these.
Mm.
All you do is just put spun hair on a hook, and pretty soon you'll start to see that it looks like it's just a big old gob, and all of a sudden it just kind of grabs and moves and positions itself around the hook.
Well, I think it's positioned nicely. It's just maybe not trimmed well.
Let's
Well,
see it.
Let me get a background thing. Oh, wait a minute, light on it.
I
There.
think that looks really quite good. Yeah, the head is slightly long, but not much. I mean, it's looking pretty doggone good. You should be pleased with that.
Well, okay, thanks. I mean, I am pleased with how the hair, I can't get it to, how the hair went around it.
Well, that's the whole thing in the trimming, doing the squaring it up and then knocking the sides off or the corners off. That'll come. I guarantee you, do a dozen, and you'll be surprised how that will improve the shape of the heads on your muddlers.
Thanks. I think I've done very limited amount of hair spinning, and I think this is actually the best distribution around the hook that I've ever had on the hair. So that's good.
Good.
Thank you.
George, can we see yours?
I want to see if that hole is the size of a 45 or the size of a 22.
Well, that was, let's see, that was David. Let's see. I'll spotlight you and put you on the spot.
Boy,
This is
you're
gonna be bad.
Oh, it was David that had the whole.
I didn't have the right colors, didn't have red floss. And
that's
then I
all right.
cut I think Al called it the collar. Before he said, this is how you avoid cutting the collar, I had already cut the collar. So this was, what do you call when everything goes wrong?
I
I
think
can
it's
tell you right
called
now,
a variant then.
I can see where
And,
you
the
caught,
chickadee I had was
problem,
orange.
but you got a good distribution around your hook. you could have put another bundle or two on the fly
think-
itself, but you got
Yeah, I
good.
think that's why I've got the hole in the head.
Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty easy to do.
And pack it really tight.
Can I go ahead and put more on now?
Just tie the thread back on. You might want to push the hair that's there back a little bit and see how that works
Okay.
out for you.
a little bit.
Yeah.
How can you put your fly back in the vise and let us look at it?
Oh, sure.
Because now that I'm looking at it and you're talking about collars, I think I may have.
Oh, that's the wrong one. Here's the one I just tied. Okay, there we go.
Somehow I got the materials.
Al, you're spinning hair on a bare hook and not over thread. Is that
That
right?
right there. It's got a red bar. There you go. Okay, I'm sorry. What did you say, Dave?
This is John. I just wanted to
Oh, I'm
clarify.
sorry.
You're spinning hair over a bare hook and not over thread.
I try not to. The first one, when I attached the black thread in front of the red where I cut it off,
Right.
I'm having to do that, but also that's where I flare it mostly in place rather than trying to spin it. Yes, I try to spin on bare hook.
Thanks.
I can spin on the other, but that's kind of a different process that I go through. I can still do the rotary function, but I have to hold it quite a bit different. And I've got to keep it quite a bit looser. And it's if you're not careful, it's real easy to drop the bundle on the tying table. I got one there I want to trim out.
Did I miss anybody else that tied? Gerald, Barbara, Evelyn. Everybody takes notes, so it looks like they're working so hard.
Well, this was a good night to take notes, to kind of get it down.
Well, we'll have recordings to look at later if you want to as well. But instead of trying to tie a whole muddler, just spin some stuff on the hook like I did. You know, cut it off, spin it back on there again. And after you've done a few, you'll kind of get the feel for the way the hair that you've got acts and the way the rotary vise does it for you.
Now, George says, what do you do if you don't have a rotary vise?
You spin it by hand. And I guess I could show that real quick.
And Sherry wants to know, how do you fish it dry?
I grease the whole thing up, including the marabou, so I can fish it right on the surface. I like to fish it, especially at night, dry, just working my way downstream slowly, roll casting to the willows. And the Upper Clark Fork River, just out of Deer Lodge, Montana, is just phenomenal for this kind of fishing.
I prefer the Jeff.
You know, she likes the
Oh,
Jeff.
oh,
Our other favorite place to fish is the Jefferson, just out of Billings, and no, out of Butte,
yeah,
not Billings.
yeah.
It's just outside of Butte, and it's pretty phenomenal. But it often gets dewatered quite a bit in the summertime when the ranchers are irrigating their pastures and their hay fields. But when you have enough water to float, it's a killer. Wow.
Check it under the willows there and strip, and
Bang,
there's
yeah.
a brown trout there.
Oh yeah.
Woo, it's fun.
In
Okay,
fact,
you were gonna show how to.
oh, I was going to show them how to spin here. Yeah.
So
I'm
another
sorry.
question regarding materials. I didn't have any chickaboo, so I basically used the chickaboo off of a partridge. Is there any reason you can't use that?
You use any kind of boo that you want is just fine.
Okay.
And I know that sounds like kind of a wise comment, but you know, on the middle feathers on a dry fly saddle hackle, the ones right up right in the middle there have got a real fuzzy base. That stuff is just
Oh.
incredible for this same fly.
Uh-huh.
You know, and usually people say, "Oh, this stuff is terrible." They throw it away. They're throwing away some good stuff.
Call that parbo.
Yeah, there you go. Anyway, I'm going to show you how to just spin hair. I'll do a Goddard Caddis type of an application. That's
Al, what strength thread have you got?
I got 3-0.
Okay.
Gretchen thinks it's single strand floss, so it's one or the other. It's no, it's 140. It's single. It's a 3-0.
And we had a question of the difference between floss and thread from Marcia.
It mostly anything is size. The single strand floss is 240 denier, and the 6-0 thread is 70. The 3-0 is 140.
That is if it's not woven thread. We're comparing thread from Danville, which is just twisted, I guess.
Yeah.
And she wants to know, can you use thread to tie this one?
Oh yeah, like if you want, I'll switch right now and I'll put on some 6-0 thread and we'll tie this one. And that 6-0 is a little bit lighter weight than what we've been tying with. This is just some gray 6-0 I got here. Let's just use that. Let me make sure I got a good, yeah, that's good stuff. Sometimes I get stuff out of my tie-in kit and it will be pretty old and it'll be starting to dry rot and cause me a problem. Let me get a bundle of hair here. And whoever asked for spinning hair without the rotating feature, in some cases it's actually easier, and I'm going to show you one, and that's the Goddard Caddis. The Goddard Caddis is a spun hair fly that is basically it's a dry fly. And I'm going to start first by just cinching the hair in place at the back of the hook. Work my thread through. I got to be a little bit careful now. I've been tying with that 3-0, and the 6-0 is a lot more delicate. Now I'm just going to trim this at an angle like that. And that's the way the Goddard starts. Now we're going to advance the thread forward a couple of turns onto the bare part of the hook. Let me get a bundle of hair. Get the trash out of it. All right. Excuse me. Now I'll just set this in place. Again, I just nicked my thread on the point of the hook. Well, I might get lucky and I might not.
Come here.
Poopy dog.
Did it again. Okay. I'm going to trim that off and spin the thread or spin the hair. See how I just make it go all the way around. And one of the things that I've learned to do after doing lots and lots of these spun flies is to increase pressure as I go around consistently until it quits spinning. Now, in fact, you notice that I cut this piece off, and instead of throwing it away, I'm just going to keep right on going because it's still good hair to spin with. So I'll get 2 spins out of that before I'll have to go to something else. You see that?
Mm-hmm.
And I'll get another bundle of hair.
You don't need to pack that.
Yeah, I should. Thanks, Gretch. There, I packed it with a packer that shoves it back a ways, gives me a little bit more bare hook to work with. If you could find me one size 8 or 10 brown hackle, maybe you've got some laying over there, I'll finish this Goddard Caddis. All right, I got rid of the junk out of the. Now I lay the hair on the side of the hook just like I am right there at a 45-degree angle. 3 turns, no more, snug but not tight. Reach up and trim off the excess. And now I apply pressure and come around, gradually increasing my pressure as I go around the hook.
Is this one long enough?
I'll make it long enough. It'll be good enough. Yeah.
I've got a longer one, but I don't think it's a 10.
Okay.
You
Well,
can take a look at it and see.
yeah. I'll just take the last of this little bit of hair to finish up here. And that spins that around there as well. And I'll just finish this off. And then when you do the Goddard Caddis is trimmed flat along the body, on the bottom. And then the scissors are angled, like I've got my scissors here right now. They're at this angle, and then you just gradually rotate the vise as you trim the body. And if you don't move your scissors from that angle, you get a nice trim all the way around.
We got a bonus fly today. Woohoo!
And we'll go ahead and put on a hackle. I guess I'm using gray. I may as well use gray all the way through. And, oh, okay, that one looks the best. Yeah, I'll just tie that on. And you notice that I'm putting on several passes of hackle, if you will, till I get right up to that point there, and we'll tie off the feather. However, the feather was all tied off before I ever got there, because every time the vise made a turn, the thread was right behind the feather and it was anchoring the feather. So every turn that I made, I anchored the feather every time. So I really didn't need to even tie it off, but I did. Okay, and that's a Goddard Caddis. It's a little bit big. Most of them we usually tie for the shops and stuff were 12s to 16s. We didn't tie very many less than 16, but a few. But that's what it looks like.
It floats.
Oh yeah, forever. Yeah, a little bit of grease on that, a little bit of fly float, and boy, it'll float all afternoon and tomorrow too.
I like to fish that in a riffle.
Yes, very good. There's one spot up on the Madison that's awful good. That I don't know, about 10 years ago, Bob Jacklin caught the biggest fish that's ever been caught out of the Madison River. It was like a 20-pound brown, and he caught it right out of my favorite hole there. I won't tell you exactly where it is, but we call it Kathmandu.
So I have a couple questions about this particular fly.
About the what?
About this particular fly.
Right.
So that body is not anatomically correct for a caddis that has emerged. But I guess a lot of flies aren't anatomically correct, so it doesn't matter, right?
This has the outline profile. If you look at the profile of the wing, forget the body, but the way the wing is tented over the body and everything, this looks very similar to the outline of a caddis. However, one this big would have to be a huge monster October caddis.
Okay, I'll buy that profile. Okay.
Yeah, we actually, usually you would only you take one bundle of hair like I had there, tie it on at the back, you spin another bundle in the middle, another one after that, all out of the same bundle that you cut off, and you'd be done. And that would be on a 12 or a 14.
Yeah.
A 16 only takes 2 spins.
Okay. So that's the reason you have that taper getting wider towards the back end of the fly to imitate that profile of the wing.
That's correct.
Okay, gotcha. Now it makes sense. And then the other thing is that I've seen a number of people tie hackles or soft hackles or dry fly hackles on the way you did, where you wrap you have your thread behind your hackle as you wrap it forward, and you wrap the thread as you wrap the hackle, or you wrap it into the hackle. And I've been concerned that when you do that, if it gets bitten there, then the whole fly is going to come apart because your
Well,
thread could get bitten.
Actually, it's not. Let's see, do I have any more hooks here? Yeah, we've got another feather here. Let's, this is going to be the identical thing to, we're going to do just some pretend stuff here, okay?
Yeah.
All right.
I guess from a practical standpoint, you've not had that happen, obviously.
Oh, no, it really depends on where you place your thread in relation to the feather.
Okay.
Okay, thank you, Gretchen, for getting those feathers. Let me just trim that off there. It's not the right size for the hook, but we don't care. We're just what if at this point in demonstrating. Okay, if I advance the thread and the hackle together and the thread leads the process, I tie nothing down.
Right.
If I reverse the process, every single turn of thread is on top of a turn of hackle.
Right.
See what's happening? You're actually following with, okay, I make this turn here. Now I follow with turns. I'm having to do it right and left-handed because we're illustrating what we're doing here, but you see what's happening?
Yes.
So
And
every
you haven't
time
had
I
problems
advance,
with,
I'm
you haven't
sorry.
had problems with fish biting that thread and the whole thing comes apart.
Well, yeah, I can do that, but the truth of the matter is, if you did it the other way and tied it down, the other way you can do it is to leave it at the back, or excuse me, how would you do? You have to. Let me get the thread to the back, because here's another way that we often do that very thing that you're talking about. And let me get back here. Leave the thread here, and forget that there's any hackle back here. We're just going to get up to the front. Pretend that we tied the hackle on here, right? Now we're going to wrap back to meet the thread.
Okay.
Now, this is the way the original Goddard Caddis was tied, except it was a wire back here instead of thread. But then as you advance it forward, you're binding it all in place. And of course, that's not going to come apart. But if you tear the thread up, and a lot of things happen when you tear the thread up.
Because I normally advance my thread to the front. And
Well,
then
I
I
did.
wrap the hackle.
I bound the feather in place before I did that, because I was actually using the thread as a rib over the
Right.
top of the feathers that had.
So Susan, do you think that because there's thread in there, it's easier for the fish to tear the thread than to tear the hackle?
That's yes, exactly.
Yeah, and I've not had that problem. In fact, if the fish tear the fly up, they're usually big enough to make me smile. So I've never really worried about it too much. But I
Yeah.
can understand where in the discussion of that. The other thing you can do that like we just did here, you can put dubbing on a hook going backwards, and then use the thread that you just applied the dubbing with to put a rib on your fly. That's the way we tie all of our, for example, the way we tie all of our green drakes, because they have a
Yeah.
yellow rib. You put it on a green body and then rib back forward. And if you do place your dubbing on starting at the front, and the last turn of dubbing is at the back, when you come forward, placing the now bare thread, you'll end up with a yellow thread rib, all tied out of the same thing.
Yeah, I just normally just wrap the I tie in the hackle then so that it's pointing out the back, and then I wrap it forward. Well, I bring my thread to the front and I just wrap the hackle forward, and I don't have the thread on top or even a rib on top of the hackle most of the time. But I will admit sometimes my hackle gets bitten. I guess anything gets bitten. So I guess, like you say, if it gets bitten, it's maybe a good thing.
Well, it's not the worst thing that happens. the thing that really ticks me off is, that, of course, I don't spend this, but if I spend a half an hour tying a fly and I lose it on the first back cast in a tree, that tends to tick me off a little bit. But I have to admit that I don't tie flies that take me a half an hour to do either. So
Yeah.
are we
We
moving?
had
back?
another question from Sherry back to the muddler is, how does it fish in a lake?
Sherry, I fished it in a lake, and the only time I fished it in a lake, I fished it on a sink tip as deep as I could get the thing. You know, when I'm saying a 30-foot sink tip, a couple of times on a shorter sink tip, but on mostly the 30-foot sink tip. Oh yeah, thank you. I was talking to the fly here. I mean, let me get back over here. There's my guy right there. Sherry, there you are. He looks like me. Anyway, yeah. Fishing on a sink tip or a full sink line. There's a fly that we need to talk about sometime. You take the muddler and tie it upside down, and you put a monofilament loop that goes over the back, which really becomes the belly, and you put 2 or 3 beads on it. It's called a bead belly bouncer. Steve, God, what was his name from California, the guy? Anyway, yeah, I can look it up and find it. But anyway, his first name was Steve. And he comes up to me at a show in San Mateo, California, which is just outside of San Francisco. He says, Al, I'd like to show you something. I cannot tell you the thousands of times I've heard that at a show that I'm going to see the next best thing that there ever was. And he gives it to me. And I said, well, I'm really kind of busy right at the moment. I'll take a look at it tonight when I get back to my hotel. I did. I looked at it. I said, what the heck is this? So Steve comes back the next day. Darn. I said, this is really cool. Well, what he does is he puts any streamer, ties it upside down with a monofilament loop over the back with usually several metal beads on it that they can just slide back and forth. Well, that flips the whole thing over and it makes a rattle if you think that that's important in your fishing. It also rides up and over rocks like you wouldn't believe. It's a pain in the butt to cast though, because you can imagine if it's hard casting a bead head, put 3 or 4 on it. So, but if you open your loop up a little bit in your cast, you can do pretty well.
We don't fish a lot of lakes anyway.
I try not to. I'm getting to the age where I'm going to have to, Sherry, but I try not to.
However, 2 years ago, we were fishing off of a sandy beach on Cascade Lake where there should be no trout at all. And you caught a rainbow, didn't you?
Yeah, I caught a rainbow that was about 28 inches. It surprises the
I don't know
cat.
what that guy was doing there.
Yeah.
We were just practicing.
Wow.
Okay, there's somebody asking a question from really. Oh, okay. Well, thank you. Thank you, George Gush.
Anybody else?
No, I think we got it. I really
Al and Gretchen, awesome.
Yeah,
Awesome,
I really
awesome.
appreciate the instruction tonight. I think there's hope now for my hair spinning ability.
Good, good. I will look in the mail for one from Susan Parsons.
Yeah, you're ready to do your gold now, Susan.
Oh, no. Too much pressure.
Yeah, there's a muddler in the gold.
Beautiful, beautiful flies tonight.